Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the kind introduction. As said, my name is Matthias Magdowski from Magdeburg, quite easy to remember. I'm an effective presentation expert. No, I'm not really. I'm a scientific co-worker at the Otto von Guericke University of Magdeburg. So I've prepared this small slide set, and hopefully I will also give an effective presentation and try to explain you how to give effective presentations. So as already mentioned, I'm associated with the chair of electromagnetic compatibility. And so I think in the electrical engineering master, it's a module in the third semester. I'm not pretty sure about this. So that's maybe the reason why we not have met yet. But yeah, please be welcome to our lecture on this quite interesting topic. I mean, if you don't know what electromagnetic compatibility is, we are the reason why you are usually asked to switch off your cell phone in an airplane, because the electromagnetic waves created by the cell phone could somehow interfere with the sensitive electronic equipment inside the aircraft. And we will maybe come back to this later. So some organizational matters at the start. Of course, you can have the slide set. I will send it to Melanie later, and she will somehow send it to you or make it available on the Moodle course. As you see, there's also a camera here. I'm wearing a microphone. I'm trying to do a recording. The slide says maybe, you never know if it works. So maybe, maybe not. So if, I don't know, some of your fellow students could not attend today because they are still in their home country or whatnot, there might be a recording. And if you have questions in between, feel free, with pleasure, ask questions. You can. I'm usually known to speak very fast and without dot and comma, as we say. But if you have a question, if you have a comment in between, just raise your arm, just interrupt me, and I will be happy to try to answer this question. Okay, and to lower the barrier maybe a bit for you to ask questions, I've created such an anonymous question and chat wall, and there will be also a survey in a second. So you can already take your cell phone and try to scan this QR code. And if your cell phone does not have a camera, or if you don't find your QR code reader quick, you can also go to this website, particify.isalsa.de, and then enter this room code there, which is 183-125 and 24. But hopefully this should work with the QR code, right? And as there are no people looking at me anymore, so usually then you should see something like this, and this will point you to this question more. And there are some surveys, there are some questions. We will come back to this in a second. Okay, so as a short motivation, why to give talks, why to give presentations? Because if you are studying at the university, you are a student, usually within seminars, you sometimes have to give some presentations. As a training, as a practice, maybe if you have done a research project, some integrated project, if you defended your bachelor thesis in your home country, if you do your master thesis here, you will also have to give a presentation about the main results of your thesis. And hopefully this presentation will be also well received by the audience. Then if you later on work as an engineer somewhere, or as a researcher, or even as a student, sometimes you have to apply for a stipend or for a grant, something like this. And yeah, later on as an engineer, as a researcher, you might go and travel to conferences and present your results there, just like presenting, let's say, a master thesis project. And for me, one of the probably most impressive presentations that I have given so far is, I think now almost 10 years ago, it was a science slam. Do you know what a science slam is? Have you heard of a science slam? So it's usually some event that takes place in the evening in a large lecture hall, or like in a theater hall, and different researchers participate, and each of them has like 8 minutes or 10 minutes, something like this, to present his or her own research topic in a, let's say, in a funny and an interesting and a very understandable way. And then usually the audience get cards with the points of 1 to 10, and they can somehow vote which was the best science slam, the best science presentation in this evening. And so this was a science slam taking place in Leipzig. I don't know if you have been there already. It's a city a bit southeast of Magdeburg, I would say. And it was a really huge theater hall, and I don't know, something like, as I've been told, 500, 600 people in this room, and then you are standing on the stage, and there are lots of shiny lights, and you can't barely see someone sitting in the audience. And then I remember that there was probably one older lady that was really laughing all the time. And because she was laughing so much also, the other part of the audience was laughing. And it was a very nice and very funny evening, and it can barely be seen on this picture, but all the people in the audience, I think some days before Leonard Nimoy, who was popular as Mr. Spock from the Star Trek, died, and then so to honor him, everyone, and it's always very challenging for me, everyone did this volcano salute that it's not really visible in the picture there. Okay, so many opportunities to give presentations. And just as a starting point for me, so now it should be the very same QR code, should be the very same web page, but now you should go to something that is called questions. It should be this icon here. And as the first question, how many presentations have you seen so far? And as we have just, I think you can insert a number. And as we have just 3 answers yet, I will probably wait. And I think you can insert a number between 1 and 100, I would guess.
So if you have seen more,
more than 100, you have to limit yourself to 100. I'm sorry for that. I think I'm not sure if I can enter higher numbers in this, but okay, so now we have 10 answers. Let's wait for, I don't know how many people we are in the room, maybe 20, 25, I would guess. So, okay, we have 13, 17, okay. So, we have a kind of a powerful statistic here, but as you can see, on average, someone has seen, lots of people have seen 0 presentations. I cannot imagine this because, okay, this is 0 to 9, okay. Yeah, and so then, okay, and some people have really seen a lot, and the average value is somewhere around 30. Okay, thank you for this. And then there should be a second question, which is how many presentations have you given yourself so far in your life, in your study, in your school? I don't know if it's common to give presentations in school in your home country. When I went to school in Germany, which was in the 1990s and early 2000s, it was already quite common. So we have also given at least, I don't know, 1, 2 presentations in school. And now it's even more popular, I would say. So my children are also now already quite old, but they have given presentations when they were still in primary school. The typical animal presentations. Every kid needs to choose an animal, and then they have to give a 3-minute or 5-minute presentation about their favorite animal, let's say. Okay, and we have 25 answers here, so let's look at the results. Okay, and so there we have just probably one person that says 100 or more than 100 presentations, and most of you say something in this very low range. So perfect opportunity for you today to learn something maybe or maybe not about effective presentation. Let's see. Okay, so still, as a disclaimer, as said at the beginning, I'm not an effective presentation expert at the Otto von Guericke University. I'm just an engineer, and so everything that I tell you about presentations is also just something that I have learned myself. But if I would need to draw a line on this diagram there, how many presentations I have given, I don't know, I would guess probably 1,000, something like this, because I'm lecturing at the university since 15 years and I travel to lots of conferences and stuff. So yeah, and this is probably also one way to get better. As in everything, just train. If you give presentations often, I think you can only get better. Okay, so then to think about good presentations, it's always a good idea to try to think about the inverse first. So this is a last survey for you. What do you, if you, and as we have seen, you've seen lots of presentations, you have maybe not given that much already, but what do you think, what makes a bad and ineffective presentation that is maybe really boring and that is hard to listen and where you would rather step barefoot on a Lego piece instead of listening to this presentation anymore? Yeah, so I'm interested to see your ideas, so I will go back to the survey. And we have 11 answers already, and we'll wait some more seconds. Because if you see the first answers, then you might say, ah, this is exactly the thing that I was also thinking about. And it will maybe hinder your creativity. But we have 17 answers already. So I'm curious, let's check the result. And yeah, lack of confidence is certainly something that, sometimes you need to talk about something where you are not that confident. Maybe still you should not make the impression that you are not confident. Sometimes you need to give presentations being, let's say, badly prepared. Still you should not give the impression that you are not well prepared. Something that, okay, you can also read this yourself. I will comment a little bit on this. Melanie also asked me in advance, can we have your slides? And I said, yeah, of course you can have my slides, but I just finished them like 5 minutes before the lecture, as usual. And I now hate it really a lot if people tell you, yeah, but please send us your slides, I don't know, 4 weeks in advance, 2 weeks in advance. From the time when I prepare the slides 4 weeks in advance until I give the presentation, I have already forgotten myself what I was like to talk to this and this slide. And so if you know what you're doing, then it's usually, from my point of view, not a bad idea to prepare the slides, not in the really last moment, but maybe the day before, 2 days before. Without figures, certainly we will talk about this. Reading everything from the slides, for sure. And if there are just few pictures, if there's lots of text, a wall of text that is just read, if the body language is bad. But this is maybe, from my point of view, a hard thing to have a good body language and no modulation of the voice. So many ideas. I mean, something I think doubles. Okay. And if the person is nervous and if everything is unclear. Okay, I think we will get back to some of this stuff. So I've tried to, and as we've already seen, a good structure, something that certainly helps with a good presentation. So I've structured it a little bit in this way that there are certain ways how to reach your audience. So let's think about this a little bit, how to give your presentation a meaningful structure. And then you also, usually in a technical presentation, you will have some slides because you're showing some data, you're showing some plots, some diagrams, some schematics, something like this. I myself, I've also seen very, very good presentations or talks of people without any slides at all. But usually, let's say in technical and engineering presentations, you will always have slides. So let's also a little bit have a look on how to create useful slides and how to visualize data that you have measured, that you have simulated, something like this. And then, as you know, also something like 5 years ago, we all had this COVID pandemic and we all went in different lockdowns, some shorter, some longer. And we have all given and listened to many online presentations or hybrid presentations with some people in the room, some people attending online and so on. And from my point of view, it's still quite interesting to think about this a little bit, because if you apply for a job somewhere, it will be quite common that you, for the interview, that you won't travel to the city, to a different country in Europe or somewhere in the world just to give a job interview. So job interviews usually nowadays are done online. And maybe also conference presentations sometimes. So what makes a good online presentation is if you have a decent video quality and if you have a decent audio quality. So what should you take care of during an online interview or online talks. This will be the last section. Okay, so let's start with how to reach your audience. And the first principle, or the basic principle, is you should know your audience. Easier said than done, because you would not like to tell people something that they already know, and you would, on the other hand, also would not like to tell people something that they won't barely understand. So you somehow should know what type of people are you talking to, what is their previous knowledge, what is something that you can connect to, right? And yeah, I have no good solution for this. You somehow need to find out before giving a talk somewhere what will be your audience. Then, of course, you will be somehow limited on time, so you need to concentrate on the main and important things and not tell something else. It's always a good idea to try to tell a story, something like this, and try to be yourself. I mean, there's this nice quote by Oscar Wilde, because everyone else's role is already given. There are some do's to do this, and this is something that we have also seen in your survey. Use figures, visualize your ideas. Yeah, we have a picture says 1,000 words saying. Try to use humor, somehow summarize something that you think it is important that you have said before. Try to motivate your audience, and try to keep on time. I've just planned usually for, let's say, 35-40 minutes, so hopefully I will be on time today for some further discussion at the end. Then the other very, 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 very important thing is speak without notes. There's only few exceptions, maybe if you give a very mathematical talk and if it's about very strict definitions of something, or I don't know, if you give a talk about law and it's about very, very specific quotations of some law or some paragraph, something like this. So that's maybe really the only exception. Try to speak freely, even if it's hard. It is hard. English is also not my mother tongue. When I went to my first scientific conference, my supervisor at this time told me, Matthias, don't be afraid. The conference language is not English, it's bad English. Right? And for everyone else, except for maybe the few American people there and the few British people, for everyone else, English is not their native language, and people will understand you, and so on and so on. The problem is, and I have a comic for this. So the problem, if you read with notes and if you have also lots of text on the slide, it's really boring for the audience, because I think there's no interaction. Everything is like pre-scripted, and it's really horrible to listen. And also, we will come back to this later, if you put lots of text on the slide, what people will do is they will read the text on the slide, and people are bad at multitasking. So if they read the text on the slide, they will not listen to you. And usually people can read much faster than you as a speaker can speak. So people read the text, they will not listen to you. Then they have read all the text. Then they say, okay, I got the message. I understood what the person is trying to tell me. Now I still don't need to listen to the person, and you are still talking, and they will take their cell phone and do their emails and check other stuff. So speak without notes. Don't put too much text on the slide. So there are some other ways to annoy your audience. If you speak too quiet, right, then it's very challenging for the people to listen in the back of the room. Then I remember that we said to our students, speak up loud so people can hear you. And then people were really screaming all the time, and it was really everyone in the first row, their ears were bleeding, right? So also if you speak too loud, it's also a challenge. I know that I usually speak very, very fast. I've tried to slow down a bit. I know other persons that if they get nervous, then they really, really slow down, right? It's also, and this mumble means, like sometimes, like the American people do, if you have the hot potato still in your mouth, and speak like this. Try to speak clear. Then I I approximately know what is there on my slides. Sometimes I have to look down, but usually try to look to the audience as much as you can. This is usually a good way to give a good presentation. Don't look at the projection screen all the time, and don't show your maybe nice back to the audience. I remember when we were listening to student presentations of some exchange student group that we had, that because of the partnering university and so on, I would like to take a photograph of each student giving the presentation. And I remember that for some students, it was really, really, really hard in a 15-minute presentation to find the 2 seconds where they were looking at the audience, because all the other time they were just standing there and looking at the screen. Then I don't usually use them anymore because they are not visible in the in my screen recording. Yeah, so that's why to highlight something I rather use the mouse. But you know, we all have these nice presenters, and they have these nice lasers where you can show something on the projection screen. The thing is, use it wisely really to highlight something. I know people that like push this all the time, and all the time they are doing like this. Yeah? And then you never know, is it now, should I focus on this? Is it important? Is it not? No one knows. And we had a colleague once that was really giving lots of very, very, very technical presentations with lots of formulas. And he would also do this all the time and say, now we have to look at this formula and this formula, and then we will take this formula and insert into the other formula. And then as a joke for some anniversary, we gave him a laser pointer. You know, these laser pointers that have not just one beam, but many. And so he could do like, as you can see in this very important formula, and then the whole screen would light up more or less. So yeah, use this laser wisely. Don't seem to be unprepared. Sometimes you are unprepared, for sure. Try to be properly dressed. A polo shirt for me is always nice. And yeah, body language is very challenging from my point of view. I mean, I often stand like this. I know that it looks bad. It looks even better if you stand like this all the time, yeah, because this is really opposing your audience. But I also find it challenging to really do something with my hands all the time. So yeah, this is because body language is something I think that you cannot really learn. It's something that happens in your body, and even if it's good, or sometimes it's good, sometimes it's maybe bad. Yeah, and I know some people that would really, all the time when they give a presentation, they would always go from one side of the stage to the other side of the stage, going back and forth. Me sitting in the audience, this is annoying me, but some people like it. I don't know, but it would be interesting to hear your opinion about this. Especially, let's say, do whatever you want if you give a presentation. If there's a video recording, and if there's no automatic tracking camera like the one that I have, and if there's a person that has to focus the camera all the time on you, please don't walk back and forth all the time, because it's really challenging for this person to keep you in focus of this camera. Okay, if you know someone in the audience, it's a good trick to give yeah, so we have done it with a printed paper like this, or you can, I mean, they can also just do the sign. Yeah, if you know someone in the audience, ask them to sit, for example, maybe in the back of the room, and if you're speaking not loud enough, then they should do like this so that you can see this, and then that you can speak up a bit. Quite easy and cheap trick to speak loud enough. Okay, then we can have a look at how to structure the presentation. And there, the simple rule is your goal should be clear. Yeah, so your presentation, due to limited time, has a start somewhere, and you want to end somewhere. And then the way between there, the route going from the start to the finish to the goal, this should be more or less clear. This is the structure of your presentation. So where do we begin? What do we already know? And where would you like to end? And as I'm speaking to a group of engineers, many engineering talks have a very generic structure. And this generic structure is also not that bad. It's a quite good idea to have this generic structure because people know what they expect from a presentation. So that you start with some introduction and then explain some fundamentals in the state of the art, let's say, and then explain, I don't know, your simulation setup and your measurement setup, and then what are your results, how they can be interpreted, how can they be discussed, and at the end there is some summary. This is usually a good idea to give some kind of engineering presentation. So the structure is good, but it's maybe a bit generic. So in the structure, use the same structure, but try to be a bit more precise, like in this example, right? You introduce someone, for example, to my field of research, electromagnetic compatibility. And then there are some fundamentals maybe of the lab where I do some of my work, a reverberation chamber, which is just something like a large microwave oven, where you cook chicken at home, we cook electronic chicken, right? We test equipment for electromagnetic compatibility. And so, then we did some experiments with shielded cables, for example, did some simulations using MATLAB, and at the end we somewhat explained the results. So this is the same structure, but a bit more understandable for the audience, I would guess. Then the question is how to plan the time range. And a good rule of thumb is to have this one message per slide. So really think about what is the main message, or what are main message that you would like to tell, and try to put one message, or try to invest one slide for a message. And then your slides are not super full. This is maybe something that also happens, that people put too many information on one slide. And so then you have several messages per slide, but not one message per slide. And if you try to explain this message, you need, I don't know, depending on the message, half a minute, maybe 2 minutes. So if you give, let's say, a 30-minute presentation, planning something like 20 slides, 30 slides, if you really have just one main message per slide, is usually okay. For a 15-minute presentation, right, which is the usual duration for presenting your non-technical project, 20 slides is already quite a lot. Yeah, so 10 slides would be okay, 15 slides would be pretty good, but having 20 slides, having 30 slides usually makes no sense. Then you have just 20, 30 seconds per slide, something like this. So with this, you can also see, okay, in a very short presentation, you can just pitch your topic, do some advertisement, invite the audience to, I don't know, read your paper or something like this. In the usual 20-minute conference presentation time slot, you can already deliver some information, but for a deeper insight into a topic, you need something really like a lecture time slot, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, something like this. Yeah, and so keeping this in mind, you can also imagine then in a 20-minute conference presentation or 25-minute presentation for the defense of your master thesis, or the typical duration for a PhD defense in Germany is 30 minutes. You can also not explain each and everything that you have done in the thesis work. You can more or less advertise your topic in a bit more advanced way, and try to tell the audience what I've done is really, really important. And if you would like to know more about this, then please read my paper, or please read my thesis. Yeah? And I'm just advertising it to you. Okay, so there are some more ways to annoy your audience. The first one is to have a too detailed structure, especially for quite short talks, to use too much time to explain the outline. Because the outline should be the outline, should not be your talk. And conference presentation, or this engineering presentation, what sometimes happens also in reports, unfortunately, is that people write it a bit like a diary, and that they also present it and explain it like a diary. Like, in the first week of my project, I have done this and this. And in the second week of my project, I have done this and this. And this is nice, but I mean, this is usually not what people are interested in. People are interested in what have you done, and what is the knowledge that, what were your results, and what is the knowledge that can be gained from this. This is the expectation. It's not about covering stuff in chronological order and explaining it like a diary. Yeah, and then if we think about the first slide, if you have no real starting point, if you have no well-defined goal, or if the way in between is not nicely structured, if there's a chaotic sequence of slides, then it's also challenging for the audience to follow. There's a nice XKCD comic about this. I won't read this. You can read this yourself. My chance to drink something. And this, who of you knows this XKCD website? You should really check it out. It's a very good guy, Randall Munro, and he does this, I don't know, since 10, 15 years probably. And 2 times, 3 times a week he publishes such a comic on scientist and nerd and programming humor, I would say. It's always very funny to look at this. Okay, so then let's go to the next section, how to create useful slides. And here the main rule, or one of the important rules, is that the slides are just a tool. The presentation is your presentation, what you are telling the audience, and the slides are just a tool to support your talk. And as already said, I've seen very, very nice and very, very good presentations where people had no slides at all. And sometimes the slides are maybe not really the solution to give a good talk, but sometimes maybe the slides are making the presentation worse than it would usually be without slides. Okay, the most common mistake, as already discussed, put too much text on the slide. Yeah, so if I'm looking at you, it can be very nicely seen that if I put this text on the slide, all your eyes go from there to there. People will read the text. Look at yourself, what you are doing. You are reading this text, you are not listening to me. And so this is what's happening. And that's why you should avoid this. And it's also, I mean, this text also does not really help you to explain what electromagnetic compatibility is, because it would only help you if you would just read it loud, what is listening there, and then what is written there, and would be very boring for the audience. So instead of using text, if you need some, let's say, some information to help you, to remember what you would like to tell, don't use text, don't use full sentences, use headwords. Because what will happen, I've just explained, people read the slide, will not listen to you. So to make it better, use headwords only and say, okay, electromagnetic compatibility is a field of electrical engineering, and it's about emission and immunity. It's about that devices don't disturb other devices in surrounding, and at the same time they are immune to external fields. So they don't emit fields, and they are have some certain immunity to external fields, and then this coupling between devices can happen via electric and magnetic fields and via cables and so on. And so now there's enough information for you to remember what you would like to tell. Still, people cannot read this. And what would be much better, what you also already suggested here, is I don't find a few pictures only, right? So even better would be put this information into a picture. So electromagnetic compatibility is about coupling interference between devices, and we have sources of disturbances that emit fields, and we have victims of disturbances that might get disturbed by external fields, and the coupling can happen over fields. It can happen via magnetic or via electromagnetic radiative fields, inductive fields, electric fields via capacitors, and so on. And so in this picture you can much more nicely explain whatever you would like to explain. So as said, the picture says 1,000 words. Try to use as many pictures, let's say, as you can. If you have some text, try to replace it by headwords. If you have some headwords, try to replace it by a figure. That would be my advice. So, as already mentioned, one message per slide is a good idea, and don't put too much information on a slide. Use short headwords only. There are many rules for this, like on one slide you should have a maximum of 6 headwords and each headword should have a maximum of 6 words. Something is, there are many of these rules out there. Try to keep it short and simple, I would say. Use a plain design, use clear contrast so that it's also nicely visible for people with bad vision. I also forgot my glasses today, still I can somehow see you. Use a large font size. Now I can ask the people sitting in the last row, can you read what is written on the slides? Can you read the size of these letters? Yes. Okay, so then it's large enough. Yeah. This is something that happens quite often, a typical mistake when people are creating slides, that they are sitting in their office or at their home but in front of a very large 27-inch screen and creating their slides, and then the 8-point or 10-point font size can be nicely read. But not if you have a bed projector in a very large room like this, and many conference rooms and so are like this room. I'm creating my slides in LaTeX, and in LaTeX it's really challenging to use a smaller font size than this, because the system would like to help you to create good slides, and good slides have a large font. And that's why it's very challenging in this tool to create fonts with small, or slides with a small font size. And then if you use colors, try to use them wisely, not arbitrarily. So as you've seen here, I have always used green for the good stuff, red for the bad stuff, let's say gray for the less important stuff. And it's usually, especially for longer presentations, a good idea to number the slides. Why? Has anyone an idea why it's a good idea to have slide numbers? And I mean, at the moment they are not visible because, or they are visible here, not in the recording, because my camera window is in front of them. But the slides here have numbers. Why it's good to have slide numbers?
If someone wants to ask a question, you can just...
Exactly. If someone wants to ask a question in the audience after the presentation, they don't have, can you go back to the slide, you know, where this picture was, no, not this one, the other one. It's much easier to ask, can you go back to slide, what do we have here, 28 again, because I have a question related to this. And the same is with headers and footers. So for the talk today, I would not really need this footer here, but if you go to a larger conference and give a presentation there, then at larger conference there are usually several sessions running in parallel in adjacent rooms, and people would also like to hop between the presentations, look at the first presentation in this room and then change to a second talk in another room. And then of course, the schedule cannot be perfectly aligned between the rooms, so sometimes one presentation takes a little longer and then you jump late into the other room and the talk already started, and then you want to make, and you already missed the introduction of the speaker, and then you want to make sure, am I in the right room, am I listening to the right presentation? And it's always a good idea in conference presentation if on each and every slide you have, let's say, your name and the short title of the presentation, so people know, okay, this is this presentation, we are here in the schedule, and so on and so on. I'm in the right room, I'm listening to the right presentation. And then I would usually say that the header, or the more you go up in the slides, the more valuable is the space, because we also all know these situations when you are sitting in a room like this and someone with a big head is sitting in front of you, like in a movie theater, and you can only see half of the screen. So what is written on top, almost each and everyone will be able to read this, and the further you go down, the harder and more challenging it will be for people to see something. So I would not put very important information at the bottom of the slide, because chances are there that half of the audience cannot really see it, unfortunately. Yeah, and so at the moment I'm seeing some people doing like this to check what is written at the bottom of the slide. No, nothing really important. Okay, so some more ways to annoy your audience if you have, unfortunately, not nicely prepared slides and they have some typos. Try to check it before. If you give engineering talks about theoretical and mathematical subjects, try to avoid very, very complicated formulas because it's really usually challenging for the audience to understand. Try to explain them in a different way. Let's say try to create, once again, a figure that explains what is the meaning of this formula. Easier said than done, but at least you can try. Try to keep your notation consistent, right? If you use F for the frequency on one slide, you should also use F for the frequency on the other slides and not something else, because this is also confusing for your audience, and the same is with abbreviations. Usually I would try to avoid abbreviations as much as possible, except for very, very basic ones like, let's say, maybe DC and AC. And if you go to an electromagnetic compatibility conference, and electromagnetic compatibility is usually abbreviated with EMC, I would say, okay, EMC as an abbreviation on a slide at an EMC conference is okay, but abbreviations are always confusing if they are not common. And don't use such fonts like Times New Roman in the Windows Office or Microsoft Office world. These are fonts with so-called serifs, right? These serifs are these, if I zoom in, are these tiny hooks, let's say, that they are at the letters. And such fonts are used in books or newspapers where you really read lots of text, because these small serifs, they help your eye to follow the line, to read the text line by line, go to the end of one line, skip to the beginning of the next line, and so on and so on. In presentations, as we've discussed, there is not so much text. You don't need to have this font that enables reading of lots of text. And the problem is that these serifs on bad projectors, it's often just, let's say, 1 or 2 pixels. So they don't improve the readability, they worsen the readability. Use a plain font, one without serifs, like the Arial font, let's say, or Helvetica or whatnot. It is called in Microsoft Office. I know that this is not done today really anymore, but I remember in my youth when we were giving presentations in school, and when PowerPoint was out, you know that you can do these fancy animations between slides, that one slide would roll over and the next one would explode and the other, and so on. Yeah, what I've read about this is that when we use such digital tools, it's always like if you grow from a child via a teenager to some adult, to grow some literacy, and every one of us does this and tries this at the beginning. Does the slide really explode? Yeah, boy, it does. But don't use it in a professional presentation. Try it out yourself, say, oh, it's cool, but don't show it to your audience. Don't have too many different colors, something that I already mentioned. And then we have this contradicting task of slides. Yeah, so as Melanie also asked me at the beginning, and this is something that you get usually asked, can we have the slides of the presentation? Yeah, sure you can, but the thing is, if you can understand each and everything of the talk just from looking at the slides, then it was probably a bad presentation, or it have been very bad slides, because as we've discussed, the slides are just a tool. The slides are not your presentation. So the only real task of slides is the first one here, the visualization of the spoken word. Something that I show you to support my talk, to visualize this. What slides are also often used is the thing that, yeah, can we have the slides? Yeah, sure you can, but the slides, if they are prepared nicely, are not a real documentation of the talk. You would maybe need a handout for this, something like this. And the slides should also not be a manuscript for the speaker. You should not, as we have seen in the Work Chronicles comic before, you should not read from your slides. So if you need to have a good documentation of the talk, I don't know, do a recording like I do, or maybe prepare a handout for your audience with some additional information that is not written on the slides if this is really necessary. I don't know. And as a manuscript for the speaker, you can, if you use PowerPoint, if you use other professional presentation software, you can have these notes on your screen. But then it's also the same challenging thing that you should not stand there like this and look at your screen all the time reading your notes, because then it's also not a very good presentation. Yeah? As you see, if I would stand like this looking at my screen all the time. So I try to avoid this. It would be possible also to do this in LaTeX, but I think it does not really help to give a good presentation, to have lots of notes. And usually because of the recording, I just record this screen, which is just mirror to this screen and so on. So I usually don't use these notes. But it's maybe a personal preference. Okay, so now we can come to the second to last topic that now has not so much to do with presentations anymore. It's more a general thing on how to visualize data, but as said in engineering presentations, you will also have lots of data visualization. And also here I have an example for a really bad diagram. And we can maybe discuss a bit what makes this diagram a bad diagram. Ideas.
We don't have, we didn't mention what is that.
Yeah, there are no axis labels.
Yeah.
They are certainly missing.
No title.
Say again?
No title.
Yeah, there is no title. I would say, I mean, here this is unfortunately, interestingly, not translated into English. This should be something like figure. And there's a caption, and if you have in a report a caption below the figure, you don't need to have a title above the figure. Maybe in presentations, a title above the figure is nicer than a caption below the figure. The caption or the title itself is, I mean, everyone can see that it's a diagram, and okay, it's a diagram of measured data, so what? It's also very generic. There's some more idea there, I guess.
Maybe also the grid, though, is not really much important, I think.
Yeah, so we can, it's difficult to assess, for example, if the maximum here is larger than 0.3 or not. Also, the numbers are very small. I could once again ask the people in the last row, are you able to read these numbers? You have very good eyes. You have eagle eyes. Then we have this gray background. No one knows why is this there. As you said, the grid is missing. The gray background probably comes from, because it's a screenshot from MATLAB. The numbers are very small. And if I zoom in, you can also see that this quality is not very good, because it's a raster graphic that consists of single pixels, which cannot be arbitrarily scaled without loss of quality. And it's in this JPEG compression. And the JPEG compression is something that was developed to compress photographs that you do, for example, with your cell phone or with some digital camera to save some space on the memory card of the cell phone or the digital camera. As you are all studying electrical engineering and information technology, does any one of you know how this JPEG compression works in the background? And I mean, the JPEG compression is the reason why we have these nasty compression artifacts here all around that can also be seen on the projector.
At least average data pixels in between them. That's why it's like.
Nah, it does not really averaging. Because if you would average, you would just lose resolution. So the resolution stays the same, and it's not purely averaging. Any other ideas? But I mean, the other question was, what does JPEG stand for? You are using it each and every day. Still no one knows. So JPEG stands for Joint Picture Experts Group. It was a group of experts that joined together to develop this standard. Quite stupid title. And it works with a Fourier transform. So instead of saving the pixels directly, so the picture is like a two-dimensional signal. It has amplitude or color values in X and Y range, let's say. And what the JPEG compression does, it calculates a two-dimensional Fourier transform of the picture. So you get like the spectrum of the picture. That would be a fully equivalent representation, but then you would not save any space. But then what the JPEG compression does is, let's say, it throws away the high frequency information, because usually you only have low frequency information in the figure. You don't have rapid high frequency information. Would be rapid black, white, black, white, black, white, black, white, and so on. And you don't have this in your photograph, maybe, except if you do a picture of a zebra from very long distance, then you might have black, white, black, white, black, white. Usually not. And so that's why if we have figures where we have this black, white, or gray, black, gray, black, and so on, the high frequency information got lost due to the compression, and that's why we see this compression artifacts. So yeah, it's a really bad diagram. Don't use raster graphics. Try to use vector graphics. We will see some example on the next slide. And label your axes. There's another nice XKCD comic. I will just drink something. And you can read it yourself. This is one of my favorites. Okay, okay, here someone has labeled the axes, still not much better. Yeah, and the same sample improved a little bit. The thing is, there's a longer talk about this example. So this has really only been the measurement of 7 frequency points, and then someone has smoothed the curve to somehow mask this effect. So if you have really just measured 7 points, show these points, maybe do some linear interpolation between them, because the line helps your eye to follow the dots, let's say, the points that really have been measured, have clear axis labels, have maybe a little larger font, have a meaningful caption. This is the measured RMS value of the current, for example, maybe. And now this is a vector graphic. And if I zoom in, you can see that now the quality is always nice and good. Because these vector graphics, they consist of single basic geometrical elements like lines, circles, letters, and so on. And so you can arbitrarily scale them, make them larger, make them smaller without loss of quality. And so this is the way you want to have it. Also in your report, also in your thesis. Don't use stuff like this. Yeah, same as here explained. A raster graphic consists of single pixels. If you scale them, you lose quality. If you have a vector graphic, then that consists of basic geometrical elements. You can scale them without loss of quality. And some more ways to annoy your audience. Usually don't put too much text on a slide, don't put too much numbers on a slide. Don't use full tables of values, because it's also usually very confusing for the audience. If you want to show some values, okay, but then maybe highlight the important stuff. We should focus on this and this, because this shows now we have improved something, or we have increased something, or we have decreased something, or whatnot. Don't use raw computer output like this. So don't use something that you get straight out of MATLAB, put it on your slides, or straight out of Python. And don't directly copy plots from your paper or from your report, because then usually the font size will be too small on a slide. So if you have a very nice figure in your presentation or in your paper, in your report with, I don't know, font size 10, font size 12 points, something like this, it's very nicely readable on paper. But if you take this, copy it to the slide, the font is usually too small. So you need to, let's say, recreate this figure with a larger font on your slides. And if you use figures from third parties, mention the source, and I would suggest to cite the source directly on the slide. Don't do something like what you do in a report, that you put in square brackets some number that refers to the source and then put a huge list of references at the end of your presentation, because people will not remember which number appeared on which slide. Instead of this, put a full reference, full citation, maybe in a bit smaller font directly on the slide. Yeah, this figure has been taken from this paper, from this report, from this website, from this book, whatsoever. Okay. So then we can come to the last section, what to take care of when giving online talks and presentations. And the first and main and really important rule is good audio quality beats good video quality. You can have the nicest picture of you, can have the best camera in the world. If you have a bad microphone, if you are not nicely audible, then it's very, very challenging for others to follow your presentation and to listen to your talk. And the best video quality is useless, let's say. So having good audio quality is the top priority when giving online presentations. Really, really important. So there are many different microphones. So yeah, every laptop has some internal microphone. Depending on the quality of the laptop, these internal microphones are sometimes quite okay. Usually they are not that good. Another reason is that the laptop usually has a fan somewhere cooling it, and so the internal microphone for sure will pick up some noise from the fan. I'm not sure. Of course, for you in the room, it will not make any difference at all. But I will maybe go to my laptop and now try to switch to the internal microphone, and you can later recording what the difference is. So this is now the internal microphone. This was a pretty expensive laptop, so I would guess that at the end it will not make a huge difference. And then just to try out, because I'm in the program now, this is my OBS board camera, my tracking camera, that is now like an hour away from me. Now I'm switching to the microphone of this camera, and I would guess it's pretty comparable to the laptop. The thing is, the further away some microphone is from your mouth, from where you speak, from where you create your speech, then it will capture more and more echo and reverb from the room. So if I switch back to my lapel microphone here, which is now this one, this should usually give the best quality, I would say. So I will switch back to my slides. And so webcams are usually better because they don't pick up the fan noises, let's say, from the computer. Even better are these headsets because they pick up your speech directly at your mouth. With these headsets, you sometimes have to be careful that you don't have this Darth Vader noise all the time. If it's too close to your nose. And I usually prefer these lapel mic or lavalier type ways of microphones. And they are, I mean, this one is, I don't know, 200, 300 euro, but I'm using it all the day, all the time, because I'm recording lots of lectures and stuff like this. They are very, very cable-bound lapel microphones that you can buy for, I don't know, 25, 30 euros. And they have very, very good quality, much better than what you get from your internal or from your webcam microphones. So I would suggest to use something like a headset or something like a lapel mic type of microphone. Because poor audio quality in an online meeting is a little bit like bad breath in an on-site meeting. So it's the person who has the bad microphone or who has bad breath, they don't care, but it's annoying for everyone else. It's annoying for everyone that has to listen to your bad microphone, and it's sometimes annoying for other people if someone else has bad breath. And depending on how high standing you are, people will make you aware that you have a bad microphone or not. So better take care of this yourself. And then we can still have a look at good video quality, and with good video quality, it's the important rule is maybe to say that a good lighting beats a good camera. You can have the best camera in the world. If you have bad lighting conditions, then the best camera will, then a better camera will help you a bit more. But you can, even with a very bad camera, you can get a very good result if you have very good lighting. So good light beats a good camera. And to show this, which is now a bit difficult to show it here in the room, I've created some examples in my former office. Or no, it's still my office, but I've rearranged it a little bit. So the worst thing that you can always do is if you sit in front of a window and if it's very bright outside, because then your face will be very dark, everything else will be very bright. And you need to have a very, very good camera, maybe also with some, let's say, AI-based detection of human faces, that the camera says, okay, I see there's a human, so let's try to keep him in focus. So then another thing is, so this is sitting with the face towards the window, so the lighting is quite good, but this is the usual, everyone can look into your nose shot. This is also what would happen if I would use the internal camera of my laptop now. I won't switch over to this. I think you can imagine how this would look like. This is the problem if you are sitting like here, straight to the window. So then one side will be very bright, the other side will be very dark. It's also not looking very good. I at least have the problem that I don't have that much hair anymore. So if there's a bright light on top of me, like also a bit here in the room, then it always creates nasty reflections. So the best is usually if you don't have good artificial lighting, to sit facing the window. Don't have direct sunlight in the window, because then you might also get shadows and very bright spots. And if you're using the internal camera of your laptop, which is usually quite okay, then put some box under your laptop, that you get the camera really on the height of your eyes, so that the camera is not looking at you from upside down. And the last picture is a bit like this here, but here I can tell you that I really put like a 500 watt spot on the other side of the room to get some light. So here's the sun, here's the window, and here's a very, very bright light that lights up the dark side of, not the dark side of the moon, the dark side of the Matthias, right? So take care of a good microphone and try to find a spot where you have a nice background and where you have nice, soft, natural light, but not direct sunlight from the outside. Okay, so in summary, practice, practice, practice for good presentations. Especially if you do a recording and stuff, know your equipment, know how to connect. So I know that we also have, unfortunately, some professors at our faculty that could not separate an HDMI cable from a USB cable. So as an electrical engineer, you should somehow know how to connect your laptop to some existing equipment in the room to get your presentation running. And don't be nervous, or at least don't make the impression to be nervous. Maybe you're super, super nervous, but maybe no one has the impression that you're super, super nervous. And one last advice is learn from other good presentations. And one of the that is always mentioned as a good example for a very good presentation is the one when Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone in 2007. It's really a nice presentation. So if you have never watched this, because you're maybe too young, you can find it on the internet and you can watch this presentation. It's also, it has everything that makes a good presentation. It somehow tells a story, it's funny here and there, still there's lots of content and so on. And of course, Steve Jobs is also a nice speaker. So this brings me to the end of my presentation. I think if you would scan this QR code, this would also bring you to maybe not exactly these slides, but an earlier version that is should be quite close to the one that I've shown today, maybe with other links in there to the questions. So I will wait some second for you to scan this QR code. And there are still some smartphones pointing at me, so I will wait some more seconds. And I think now everyone should be more or less finished. More or less. Okay. And so then let me go back to this here and see if someone typed in some questions before. No, just someone said hi. So yeah, then thanks for your attendance. And then, well, and then we still have time for questions maybe. So, which questions do you have?
Do you have some hints? Actually, you said it's good to that we don't appear nervous, but if we are nervous, do you have some hints how we can manage stage fright?
Take a deep breath. No, I don't have that much other hints. Maybe try to drink something. I think this helps. I would also, if you have a presentation and if you know, okay, it's longer than 10 minutes, I would suggest to always have something to drink because it helps your voice. It also may help a little bit if you are nervous, then okay, you can drink something. And it also sometimes helps if you are, let's say if you're really giving something like a lecture and you're awaiting questions, then I think unfortunately what many lecturers do is they ask, are there questions? And then they wait just like 0.5 milliseconds, and if no one has a question, then they just continue. And of course, I mean, I know it myself, you are listening to someone and maybe you have a question in between, but then you don't want to ask a question and you maybe write down a question or you somehow save the question somewhere. And then now there's the point where you are asked to ask a question, but then you know, now it's a question. What was my question again? You have to look and then you have to raise your arm and so on, and everything takes time. And so if you are giving a presentation, if you are expecting questions from the audience and if you ask the audience, it's also always usually a bad thing to ask, have you questions? Because this implies that people might not have questions. It's, from my point of view, much better to ask, which questions do you have or which questions are still open? And then drink something, and then people know, okay, you will not start to talk and they can raise your arm and then they can ask your question. But to don't be nervous, I don't have many other hints and suggestions except for this. Which questions are still open? And I mean, another funny anecdote that I can tell that goes a little bit into the same direction. If you get, after some presentation, if you get questions afterwards, what do you do with questions? Because it might happen that, I mean, there are many different types of questions. Sometimes people ask a question that is sometimes really, really silly or stupid because they maybe missed the beginning or they totally misunderstood something. Then you have to be kind of polite and say, okay, this is, I will go back to the slide and maybe you just missed this part and so on, and I will explain it once again. I mean, then there are typically normal questions where maybe there was some ambiguity on your slides and or people really have a technical question on what you have done, and then you will answer this question, everything is fine. Sometimes people just ask questions to show off what what nice stuff they have done and why they have not been cited in your work and so on and so on. Then you also have to be polite and explain them that you have checked the literature before and you have not, unfortunately, not found their paper and you will check it afterwards and so on and so on. And sometimes, of course, you get questions that you cannot really answer. And then it's also, instead of trying to guess some answer, then it's sometimes also better just to say, oh, that's a good point. We have not thought about this. Maybe we can discuss this later in the coffee break and have some idea about this. Of course, if it's like your integrated project, research project, non-integrated project, master thesis, PhD, whatnot presentation, then this should be really, really your last option to say, I don't know this, I've never thought about this. Then it's sometimes better to, let's say, think loud and try to explain what you are thinking and what would be your idea about this question that you have not really thought of before. And the interesting story is that what I have read in the, I would guess, 1920s or so, a famous German physicist, Max Planck, did a tour and gave talks at different universities. And I mean, at this time, the internet was not invented. It was very challenging for newspapers to print photographs and so on. So if Max Planck would come to another city, people would usually not know how Max Planck would look like, because there was no like talk announcement with a picture of him somewhere. So he traveled with a driver and he has given his talk at, I don't know, 10 universities. And at some day he's not feeling that well. And he asks his driver, hey, you know, you have been traveling with me all the journey, giving the different talks at the different universities, and you have always listened to the talk. I'm not feeling that well today. Can you please give the presentation for me? I mean, you have listened 10 times to it. You know what I'm usually talking about. And then the driver said, yeah, okay, why not? I can do this. And so the driver gave the presentation instead of the real Max Planck and explained about, I don't know, quantum mechanics or what the talk was ever about. And then someone in the audience was asking a question. And then, of course, the driver of Max Planck, who just, let's say, gave the talk from memory, of course, could not answer this question. And so then he reacted very, very good and said, yeah, this is a good question, but this is such a basic question that even my driver can answer it. And so he gave the question to the real Max Planck, and then he stood up and answered the question. So this is also something that you can do, not in your master thesis defense, but something that you can do in a conference setting that often you will travel with colleagues, and maybe you can just give the question to your supervisor or to your professor or to some other member of the team that might have a better idea in answering the question. And there's one question.
What if, for that case, the case of your project, your master's thesis or maybe a PhD thesis you are defending, and such a question comes up and you don't know the answer, and also maybe a professor, your supervisor is not there. What do you do?
Yeah, I said then I would say this is a very good question. I have not thought about this yet. We will keep this in mind. This is a very good idea for future work. Something like this. Another hint or another advice is, if you prepare slides for some project presentation, for your master thesis, for example, of course as I will go back to my slide here before, you practice, and you find out, I've created too much slides, my presentation will be too long, I can never make it on time. Then of course you need to delete slides, let's say, from your presentation. But don't totally delete the slides, just move them as a backup to the end of the presentation after your final thank you other question slide. and keep them as a backup. And then if there are questions and you know, but this is much better explained on this in this backup slide, then you can still in the discussion go to this backup slide and answer this question. And with this, sometimes, of course, you can also kind of provoke questions if you leave out some nasty important detail that is totally necessary to understand. And then, of course, people will ask this, well, okay, which type of instrument have you used or which kind of setting? And then we will go to this slide, let's say, later on in the backup.
But I think it's also important if you have really no idea about that answer, it's also
to be honest and say you have no idea.
So anyway, if you try to tell them something else, then the audience will also know that you are trying to get somehow around answering that question, and maybe also this is not good for your integrity. Yeah. So
yeah, so at the conference, I would be very honest and say, okay, that's a good question. I have no idea. As said, in some kind of oral exam, in some colloquium, in some project, thesis, defense presentation at the university, some professors might ask you questions that you cannot really know. And then, I mean, they want to check how will you react in this moment, and can you quickly think about beyond what you have already done, let's say. Yeah, but it strongly depends on the setting and on the professor and on the supervisor and so on and so on. So yeah.
Also, for example, maybe if they ask a question which you don't know, can't you say this was not in the scope of your study?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this is where we go back to the structure of the presentation. Usually, yeah, if you have a structure like this, then in the introduction or in the fundamentals, you will also usually say this was the scope. This is the and everything that goes beyond this, we will not have a look at this. Okay, this seems like there are no more questions, so thank you again.